I'm not making new law. I'm eliminating bad policy. What I'm doing is taking on the issues that 99% of them, that the last president of the United States, issued executive orders I thought were very counterproductive to our security, counterproductive to who we are as a country, particularly in the area of immigration. This is about how America is safer, stronger, more prosperous when we have a fair, orderly, and humane legal immigration system. And with the first action today, we're going to work to undo the moral and national shame of the previous administration that literally, not figuratively, ripped children from the arms of their families, their mothers and fathers at the border, and with no plan, none whatsoever, to reunify the children who are still in custody and their parents.
President Biden signed 3 executive orders yesterday addressing the U.S. immigration system with the goal to reunite separated families. His actions establish a family reunification task force for the children separated by the Trump administration as part of its zero-tolerance policy, direct a review of Trump administration policies with respect to migration at the southern border, and streamline the legal immigration process. Joining us now, Executive Director of Care in Action and Chair of Families Belong Together, Jess Rocketto, and President and CEO of the National Immigration Forum, Ali Noorani. Ali, I'll start with you. Is President Biden taking the correct steps so far? What else is needed? And I'm personally interested in how we get these children back with their families.
Well, you know, if there's one thing that's seared into the minds of voters across the country, particularly as you were talking with Tim earlier, suburban conservative Republican voters, is the fact that the Trump administration ripped apart thousands of families in 2018. So for President Biden to sit in front of the bust of Cesar Chavez and to sign an executive order that says we as the Biden administration are going to work across agencies at a cabinet level to reunify the families is a remarkable step forward for the country. And to really be able to throw the full resources of the federal government at this problem, make sure that the families are reunited, understand what the options are for them to be able to, be joined back together, whether it's here in the U.S. or in their home countries. I'm not sure if there's anything that could be more important in the context of immigration for suburban, conservative, as well as obviously Latino voters and others. I mean, this is something that's incredibly important for the entirety of the country.
Mm-hmm. Victoria DeFrancesco Soto, you can take the next question to Jess.
So, Jess, what we saw in these executive orders, it's an important first step, but it's not really any actionables, right? It's about forming a task force. It's about reviewing the MPP protocols and Title 42. So it's a lot of kind of the planning stage. What are you hearing from the folks that you work with, the folks who are in the shadows, who are living in fear? How are they feeling about this first step, which is important but not really actionable?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to gloss over what a relief it is after 4 years of relentless attacks to have this moment, especially so early in the Biden presidency. It's a new day, and that is definitely a little bit of a sigh of relief that all of us who do this work day in and day out are feeling. But to your point, at the end of the day, the only way to ensure that every family is reunited is to end the Remain in Mexico policy. Every single day the Remain in Mexico policy is still in effect is a day where families are separated, where people aren't getting the medical care that they need, and where we're not able to reunite families. So that has to happen immediately. But, I think the prevailing feeling from advocates on the ground is that we're ready to do this work. Shelters, NGOs, lawyers, regular folks who have upended their lives because they are so passionate about reuniting these families have been the ones who have been filling in the gaps for the government for the last 4 years and before that.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.